Daniel Mercer had never been late to anything important in his life, except tonight. The digital clock on his dashboard glowed 8:17 p.m., and his blind date with one of the most powerful CEOs in the city had started at 8 sharp. He tightened his grip on the steering wheel, heart pounding, not because he feared embarrassment, but because he feared something far deeper, disappointing his daughter again. 7-year-old Lily sat quietly in the back seat, her small hands folded in her lap, her dark brown braids resting over her shoulders. She had insisted on coming along, even though Daniel had tried to explain this was a grown-up meeting. But Lily had looked at him with those wide, hopeful eyes and said, "What if she's the one, Daddy?" And Daniel, who had buried his heart the day his wife passed away 3 years ago, couldn't find the strength to say no. He was a single dad, a construction supervisor who worked double shifts to keep their modest apartment filled with warmth and laughter. He wasn't the type of man who rubbed shoulders with CEOs. Yet somehow, through a friend's stubborn matchmaking, he had agreed to meet Claire Whitmore, the brilliant, sharp-minded CEO of Whitmore Tech, a woman whose face had appeared on magazine covers and business journals, admired for her intelligence and feared for her decisiveness. She lived in a world of boardrooms and billion-dollar deals. Daniel lived in a world of scraped knees and bedtime stories. And still, he had said yes. The delay had been Lily's fault, though he would never blame her. On the way out the door, she had frozen, clutching a small, folded piece of paper. "I need to bring this," she had whispered. Daniel had asked what it was, but she had shaken her head. "It's important." Then, halfway to the restaurant, she'd grown pale and quiet. Daniel, ever attuned to the smallest change in her breathing, had pulled over immediately. "Are you okay?" he had asked, fear gripping his chest. Lily had nodded after a moment and admitted she was just nervous, for him. That had been the first crack in his composure. His little girl was worried about his heart. By the time they arrived at the upscale restaurant downtown, the hostess's polite smile barely concealed her curiosity. Daniel was dressed in his best navy jacket, slightly worn at the elbows, and Lily wore her favorite blue dress with a white collar. The place glowed with warm lighting and quiet conversations. Crystal glasses clinked softly against porcelain plates. Daniel spotted her immediately. Claire Whitmore sat near the window, posture straight, blonde hair swept into a sleek bun, dressed in a black blazer and white blouse. She checked her watch, her expression unreadable but edged with disappointment. Daniel swallowed hard. "Stay close," he murmured to Lily. As he approached, Claire looked up. For a brief moment, surprise flickered across her face, not just because he was late, but because he wasn't alone. "Mr. Mercer," she asked, her tone calm but cool. "I'm so sorry I'm late," Daniel began, his voice steady but humble. "And I owe you an explanation." Claire's eyes shifted to Lily, who stood slightly behind him. "I see that," she said carefully. The air felt heavy. Daniel crouched beside his daughter. "Sweetheart, why don't you sit with me for a minute?" Lily nodded, clutching the folded paper in her hand. Claire watched the interaction closely, her corporate armor firmly in place. They sat down, and Daniel explained briefly that his babysitter had canceled last minute. It wasn't entirely a lie, the sitter had canceled, but Lily had also insisted on coming. Claire listened, her fingers lightly resting on the table beside 2 untouched glasses of water. "I value punctuality," she said, not harshly, but firmly. "In my world, being late costs millions." Daniel nodded. "In mine," he replied softly, glancing at Lily, "being present is worth everything." Something shifted in Claire's expression at that. Dinner began awkwardly. Claire asked measured questions about his work, his life. Daniel answered honestly, without trying to impress her. He spoke of construction sites and calloused hands, of packing school lunches at 6 a.m., of learning how to braid hair from YouTube tutorials. Lily listened quietly, her eyes moving between them. Claire's posture slowly softened as Daniel described the first time he had burned pancakes because he didn't know how to tell when they were ready. "She ate them anyway," he said, smiling at Lily. "Said they tasted like adventure." Lily giggled softly. Halfway through the meal, Lily tugged gently at her father's sleeve. "Daddy," she whispered. Daniel leaned down so she could speak into his ear, but Lily hesitated. Then she turned toward Claire instead. "May I tell you something?" she asked in the smallest, bravest voice. Claire blinked, surprised. Of course, she replied. Lily slid off her chair and leaned close, whispering into Claire's ear. Daniel watched, confused, as Claire's composed expression faltered. Her eyes widened slightly. Her hand rose to her mouth. And then, tears. Silent, sudden tears. The restaurant noise faded into the background as Claire leaned back, looking at Lily as if she had just heard something sacred. Daniel's heart pounded. Is everything all right? He asked. Claire couldn't answer immediately. She reached for a napkin, dabbing her eyes carefully. What did you say to her, sweetheart? Daniel asked gently. Lily looked at him, then back at Claire. Claire took a steadying breath. She said that before we came tonight, she prayed that I wouldn't be mad at you for being late. Claire's voice trembled. She said you always tell her that the right person will understand your heart. And she wanted me to understand that you were late because you were helping her calm down when she got scared. Daniel felt his throat tighten. Lily stepped closer to Claire. He doesn't go anywhere, she continued softly, without making sure I'm okay. And I don't want him to be alone forever because of me. Claire's tears flowed freely now. She turned away for a moment, composing herself. Do you know, she said finally, looking at Daniel, that when I was her age, my father missed every recital, every birthday dinner. He said he was building an empire for me. But I would have traded all of it for one bedtime story. The weight of that confession settled over the table. Daniel reached for Lily's hand. Claire leaned forward slightly, her carefully constructed walls visibly crumbling. You were late tonight, she said to Daniel, her voice softer than before. But for the first time in a long time, I'm seeing a man who understands what truly matters. She glanced at Lily. And a little girl who reminds me of what I lost along the way. Dinner transformed after that. The conversation flowed naturally, filled with laughter and vulnerability. Claire asked Lily about school, about her dreams. Lily declared she wanted to be a boss like you, but nicer. Claire laughed through her tears. Daniel watched them, something fragile and hopeful blooming in his chest. For the first time since his wife's passing, he didn't feel like he was betraying the past by imagining a future. As the evening ended, Claire stood outside the restaurant with them, the city lights reflecting in her eyes. Thank you, she said quietly to Lily. You reminded me that success means nothing if you have no one to share it with. Lily hugged her without hesitation. Daniel felt a warmth he hadn't known in years. Claire looked at him and said, next time, don't worry about being late. Just promise me you'll always keep choosing her first. Daniel nodded. That's a promise I'll never break. They walked to their car, Lily slipping her small hand into his. Daddy, she said sleepily, I think she understood. Daniel looked back once more at Claire, who stood watching them with a softened smile. Yeah, he whispered. I think she did. Sometimes, life's most powerful moments don't happen in boardrooms or on grand stages. They happen in quiet whispers from the purest hearts. If this story touched you, if you believe love, integrity, and family still matter in a world chasing titles and wealth, make sure you subscribe to this channel for more stories that remind us what truly counts. Because sometimes, the smallest voice carries the greatest truth.